1, 2, 3, 4, let's go.
It's Heartbeat.
It's a fabulous show.
Alaska.
Hi, Heartbeat Alaska.
It's Heartbeat. Alaska.
Pull up a chair and enjoy the show.
Hear it from Sitka to Barrow. Gather around for Jeannie's show. It's the Aleut, the Indian, and the Eskimo. It's the Aleut, the Indian, and the Eskimo.
Welcome one, welcome all.
Hello and welcome to Heartbeat Alaska Native News and Native Information. I'm Jeannie Green. I'd like to welcome our viewers in the state of Washington. We're broadcast out of KWSU-TV, public television in that state. And if you're a first-time viewer, welcome aboard. You are going to experience a wonderful program. We travel across the north, sharing stories from remote villages, from Alaska natives, from natives across the north. If you'd like to email me, the email address is right there on the screen. We love feedback, and we certainly appreciate being invited to your reservation. So I'll be back right after this.
Heartbeat Alaska would like to thank the following sponsors for making our show possible. Brown's Electric. Thank you, Brown's Electric, for your generous support. Heartbeat Alaska is also brought to you by Frontier Flying Service. Thank you, Frontier, for getting Heartbeat Alaska airborne.
Heartbeat Alaska is made possible by Kupik Carlisle Transportation, your full-service transportation and logistics company.
It's the Aleut, the Indian, and the Eskimo. It's the Aleut, the Indian, and the Eskimo.
Welcome one, welcome all.
On the banks where the Kuskokwim and Tuluksak rivers meet, children play and adults go about their business, enjoying the perfect summer day in Tuluksak, Alaska. But the sunshine and calm only mask the recent buzz in this normally quiet Yupik community. The few buildings left of the old school stand silent and empty, awaiting demolition. After years of serving the children of Tuluksak, these buildings are making way for the massive multi-million-dollar structure built to replace them. This evening, local residents will gather inside the new school to witness the many talents of Gene Tagaban. The accomplished actor, storyteller, and counselor traveled from his home in Washington State to put on a performance that will humor and thrill, all while reminding people of some of the things that make Native culture great. Unfortunately, not all of the excitement in the village has been positive. Fierce flooding of the Kuskokwim River has wreaked havoc throughout Tuluksak and many neighboring villages over the last several days. Now the waters have calmed, but the disorder still lingers. The flooding of the town's runway temporarily stopped air traffic. But even the mighty Kuskokwim River can do only little to slow the progress of the region's determined flight students.
Which way is the runway heading to? 02 and 20. So which one you landing on? 02, other way around. Okay. And what side traffic can you make? Left hand. You want to try to touch down at the beginning portion of the runway. Yeah. November's on final for runway 20 Tuluksak. Tuluksak traffic Cessna 76 November is on base for runway 20 Tuluksak.
Touchdown. Another cross-country trip logged and another landing are some of the things that bring a flight student closer to a career as a commercial pilot. A goal shared by the students of Bethel, Alaska's flight school. Since the early days of flight, aviation has had a unique relationship with our state. For most of rural Alaska, transportation of building materials, groceries, medical supplies, and mail by roadway has been and remains an impossibility. While shipping by sea had traditionally played the main part in development, the seasonal limitation due to the long periods of coastal and river freeze-up was obvious. And so the role of the Alaska bush pilot was born. Today, the state of Alaska boasts the highest flying rates of both licensed pilots and aircraft owners. And flying remains the most commonly used method of travel and shipping throughout the bush. And with that need for flight service comes a demand for pilots trained to deal with the often harsh and erratic weather conditions common in Alaska. As Director of Operations at the flight school, seeing that demand met with capable flight staff is Will Johnson's work.
I think there's going to be a lot of interest in this meeting if everybody's not out flying. Our name means place where people earn their wings. The flight school was originally conceived of a few years ago, back in the late 90s, when we determined that we needed to have another source of pilots. Alaska doesn't produce enough pilots for its own needs, and so we hire a lot of pilots from the lower 48. This sends payroll dollars down south, and unfortunately, the folks from down south, when they come up here, many don't want to stay. They're just using Alaska as a stepping stone to their career as a large jet pilot. If we can employ our local people, then these people will stay in the region. Their payroll will go back into the community. They already know the weather, they know the terrain, they know the language, the culture. They're very experienced with the ways of the region, and mainly this is their home and they want to stay here. So whatever experience we build with these people will stay in the region. We'll build our experience base. The only thing that separates us from being able to utilize our local people is training.
Welcome one, welcome all.
It's a fabulous show.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Jeannie.
Hi, Jeannie.
Hi, ladies.
Heartbeat Alaska.
Real nice to see you folks.
Hi, Heartbeat Alaska.
Gather around.
Pull up a chair and enjoy the show. Tune in each week. You'll be glad you did.
It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo. It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo.
Welcome one, welcome all.
Learning to fly can be a rewarding experience, but not one that comes easily. In addition to all of the studying and calculations, countless takeoffs, landings, flight hours must be logged along the way. One method of sharpening flight skills is by training on a simulator. Scammon Bay's Kyle Kaganak demonstrates.
About a month ago, I got my private pilot license. Right now, I'm working on my instrument rating, and then after that, I'll go for my commercial rating. I'll be using Cessna 172, and I'll be doing some pattern work here. And I'll be taking off about 60 knots and climb out at about 75 here. And then after I take off, I'll climb up to about 500 feet and then turn left and climb up to about 1,000 feet here. And then I'll do a touch and go here. And right now I'll be setting up for landing here. Landing speed would be about 80 knots to 75 knots. Right now I'm on a left down for runway 18 in Bethel. And I'll be turning to left base for runway 18.
But any pilot can tell you that computers alone won't teach the finer points of aviation. Sitting with the student as he leaves the ground for the first time and ensuring a safe and thorough lesson is a task left to the staff of experienced flight instructors.
Okay, we're gonna fly about 700 feet, huh?
We have 4 instructors here now, including 1 native instructor. We've had other native instructors in the past. Our hope is that people can come to school here, eventually get their instructor ratings, and return some of that knowledge to the next generation of pilots. At that point, we would expect them to be able to go on to an airline job. So that's where our instructors disappear to, and we hope that we have more coming along to help train our new pilots.
I'm going to be doing a pre-flight, and this is where I get the POH, or Pilot's Operating Handbook, from here. So that's where I get it. And I also have to make sure that the airworthiness certificate's right there, and also the weight and balance. So I'm going to start up my pre-flight inspection. And I check my fuel quantity. I check the baggage door. I usually check this fuselage right here. I check the stability of this, see if it's nice and stiff. And right here is a lead weight. That's what I check for. Make sure it's not going to come off. Check these bolts right here. And I have to check for the stiffness of the flap. Make sure these cotter pins are in. See if the lights are working. So dents, no nothing on here. I check for the disc. They make sure these screws right here are not loose. Shimmy dampener. Check for any dings here. Belt's nice and tight. They make sure there's no loose bolts, no nothing. Well, looks like the plane's ready to fly, and here I go.
And finally, with everything in working order, Tristan Carl and instructor Jim Strickland are skyward bound, taking flight to perform repeated landing drills called touch and goes.
Right after we did a pre-flight, we did a engine run-up to make sure the engine's running nice and smooth. Make sure there's no problem. And now next thing, we had to listen to the ATIS information to see what information we have, which way the wind's coming from, and what is our visibility. And now that I had to request the tower to go to Delta and also do a short approach long landing. While we were up there, it was a pretty good crosswind. I was kind of a little scared, but I'm so glad I got over it. So we did a few crosswinds. While we were landing, I knew we had to curb into the wind first. And before it touched down, we had to straighten the plane out to the runway, put the wings down towards the wind, and do a one-wheel landing. And you see, they were kind of it was a little bumpy up there. So we did at least 3 touch and goes. So I'm telling you, it's pretty rough, and it takes a lot of practice to do crosswind landings.
Well, this is one of the very powerful things about Capstone. We have here a display of Southwest Alaska.
Will Johnson's advocacy of flight safety isn't limited to his involvement with the school. This evening, he attends a meeting to discuss the implementation of the latest in aviation technology, a revolutionary safety program being developed right here in Bethel called Capstone.
This has been an enormously successful program that started in Alaska. I believe that we will see this system become worldwide, a worldwide standard. It uses ADS-B, Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. It's a way of airplanes communicating with each other electronically and ground stations electronically to receive weather information, collision avoidance information with other airplanes. The weather information can be graphical or textual, written out. We also have terrain avoidance information, a moving map that shows where the terrain is, and of course we have other selections, moving maps that show the general area, the navigational aids, the airports. So it's a very, very powerful piece of technology that's installed in the cockpit of airplanes here in the Bethel region. We hope soon to expand across Alaska and eventually across the United States and around the world. It gives the pilot tremendous situational awareness. It allows for flight following so that if an accident does occur, then we know right where that airplane went down, where it disappeared. This has already resulted in a number of saves where we've taken the search out of search and rescue. Our searches are gone, we simply go rescue people. The beautiful thing about this is there's been a dramatic reduction in the accident rate. I've heard figures as high as 47%. That means that we've cut the accident rate almost in half. This is truly remarkable, an amazing payback. What this does is allow the dispatchers for the airlines to view the airplanes and determine when the planes will land, where they're located. If there happens to be an accident, we know where they last were. And one of the nice things that comes from all this is customer service. I heard the story last night where an agent in the village was able to tell when his plane was landing, so the fresh fruits and vegetables didn't have to stay out on the runway too long. He could actually tell by looking at his monitor when the plane was going to land.
Garris Kingiak and Will Johnson explain the program and how to enroll.
I personally fly around to a lot of the high schools around our area. I've been up to Nome. I've been almost everywhere on the Delta here, trying to recruit students for our flight school. I still have a few more places to go, but our flight school is a government-funded flight school, so we're not a profit-driven flight school. You're more likely to get a good, quick education out here. Of course, it's all dependent on the weather. The school kind of shut down for a little while and then started back up. But I think it's here for good now. Just depends on whether or not we get a large amount of students here or not.
We accept pilots from all over the state. There's many, many funding options and scholarships available for pilots. A lot of ways to get your ratings here. We have full-time operation. We're here 7 days a week into the evenings. That way we can take advantage of people's free time to train and the good weather that sometimes occurs on the weekend after having bad weather during the week. We also have flight simulators, including one elite simulator with an instructor station, terrific for training for the instrument rating. We also have a written test center here. We have a local examiner here for medical exams, so you don't have to go to Anchorage anymore for your exam, although you can certainly do so. And we have a flight test examiner scheduled to come online sometime this summer. We presently have examiners from FAA who help us out with getting our check rides for our pilot applicants. The path that a person would take to come to this school would be to apply to the school. We would do a background check, make sure that the student has a good background. We want to avoid anyone with felonies or drug and alcohol problems. Those things don't mix with being a pilot. We'd like to see people who have good command of the English language, since English is the international language of aviation, and also good mathematics skills are very important. After those students are accepted, then they can go to work locating funding, and once they locate funding, they should get their medical exam just to make sure that there's no medical reason that they can't fly. The FAA is primarily interested that a person has good sight, good hearing, and nothing that would incapacitate them during flight.
There's a lot to understand in aviation when you're flying. It's not like you're just going to go out there and fly. You have to know your emergency procedures, which is carburetor, gas, undercarriage, mixture, primer, and seat belts. Check, you have to check them all. When you're flying a plane, there's much more to worry about with the weather, the fueling, the preparation for the flight. Like, you have to be physically fit for the flight. You have to have all these kinds of attitudes towards flying, like situational awareness. You can't have macho, you can't be impulsive, you can't be invulnerable, and you can't have resignation, or you can't want to like resign when you're out flying. Like, you have to be there at all times. It's your life when you're flying. Yep, well, ever since I was 11th grade, I wanted to become a pilot because I was looking at a bunch of things on a list, and I didn't feel like I was interested in anything else but flying.
Traffic in sight, clear for takeoff. Cessna 76 November.
I'd rather have a life where I can do some work that I don't really know too much about, get new experiences. Part of being a pilot is working all over the world and getting to see interesting and exciting places. Pretty much encourage younger guys, younger ladies, for the next generation to get their private pilot's license so they can take out their younger brothers and sisters or parents out to their hometowns in the rural area and wherever they want to go. When you're young and when you're still learning at a good speed, it's about the best time to keep on moving, but you're never too old to become a pilot. I know a guy who was 60 years old, got his private license here at our flight school, and now he wants to work on his instrument rating. When you're out flying, it's just so much fun if you know how to do it. It's kind of like a bird, and it's flying up in the air, and then, it's like an eagle. It wants to quit for a while, comes down and grabs a salmon, and then takes off again. And it's just so much fun if you know how to do it.
If you think smoking isn't a big deal, think again.
I started smoking when I was 16. I quit 7 years ago, and I'm back smoking again for a year now.
Nicotine's definitely something that's it's an incredible drug.
Tobacco.
It's been put on the list as potent and as addictive as heroin.
Those cravings are so real, yeah.
Which is an incredibly addictive drug. And especially with the mixture of cigarette chemicals that you get.
I'm an Alaska native and I live a healthy lifestyle. I don't need tobacco. It's not hard. I spend time with my family. I spend time outside. I love life, and tobacco's not a part of it.
This Health Minute brought to you by AT&T Alascom.
What are you doing? You're endangering my life. Just returning the favor.
It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo. It's the Aleut, the Indian and the Eskimo.
Welcome one, welcome all.
They
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another Heartbeat Alaska. And once again, welcome to our new viewers in the state of Washington. Heartbeat Alaska now is aired from one coast to the other, from Washington all the way across to our good friends in the Seminole tribe. Hello, my good friends on the Seminole Nation. We're aired on 5 reservations in Florida. God bless every single one of you, and thank you so much for joining us once again for Heartbeat Alaska. See ya.